Hey folks, Al Reese here with RX Athletes, helping you get stronger, fitter, faster in the world of functional fitness. And today our guest is no other than Aaron Woodman. He's actually one of the leading British athletes when it comes to Hyrox with a British record. Just finished off the back of 2 consistent weeks of the Hyrox Pro events and a couple of team events as well. In fact, he's basically all Hyrox at the moment. And I really want to have a deep dive today about some of the tactics, the methods and the training that can help basically anyone from beginners to advanced athletes sort of improve their performance in Hyrox. Anyway, that's a little bit about the introduction. What I'd like to know now, if it's possible for you, with yourself, is just give us a little bit of a 60-second introduction about, how you got into Hyrox and sort of what did you do before you got here.
Yeah, so basically came from a running background. So most people either come into this from that kind of strength background or a running background. I ran non-stop for like 7 years, probably before I even thought about high rocks. So more of the long distance stuff. So I've done a few ultras up to 95 miles and then got some pretty decent times at half marathon and marathon as well. Managed to run a 2:24 just before COVID kicked in, and then COVID kicked in and carried on running. I won a lot of races, got a little bit bored. Then I heard, I was in the gym one day and one of the lads said to me about Hyrox. I was like, never heard of it, mate. Googled it, spelt it wrong, Hydrox, Hyrex. I couldn't really, he was Scottish on here, half caught what he said. So he came in about 3 or 4 days later and I said, Ali, what are you on about? So he showed me the website. I said, it actually looks like something I'm interested in. So started doing a little bit of training, entered one for March 23, February 23 for Glasgow, but was like getting FOMO already. So put myself on the wait list for London, and then in 22, the end November 22, went and did that. Flew over in the morning from Northern Ireland, did the event, nearly died, flew back that evening, well, missed my flight, and then I get a later one. But as soon as I finished the first one, I said to the lads, that was probably the most disgusting and the best thing I've ever done. And since then, I've been full gas, high rock. So that's November 22. So we're at 2 years pretty much in a couple of weeks' time. And since then, I've dabbled, done all the categories now apart from the relay. So open. So that's where I've got the British record in the open. I think it's still one of the top 10 fastest ever times. Pro, done all right in that. So my first pro race was the World Champs in Manchester, and I finished third overall. I would have won it if I could wobble, but I can't. Still not very good with a 9. And then managed to get a 56-minute pro in Berlin earlier this year. And then did a couple of races this year. Started the season last week, really, with some more
Yeah.
doubles.
Right. Incredible. And I just want to lay a bit of context on it because at the end of the day, you're just laying it all out like it's a run in the park. I mean, the magnitude you're competing at, the level you're competing at, we're talking about on a world stage now within the space of a year and a half. Is that right? 18 months.
Pretty
Um,
much.
and even before that, you just knocked out, you said those marathon times and half marathon times that are ridiculous. So really you've come back, you've come out from basically an elite runner's background because those timings are phenomenal, right? If you look at what would you say, 2:20 for the marathon?
2:24. So it's kind of that sub elite, you know, dad with a job, top end of
Yeah,
that style.
yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah,
it's that involved. Like I was running 100 miles a week. So when I was living in England, I ran to work like 8 miles every day, and then ran home 4 or 5 miles, and was
yeah.
probably 7, 8 kilos lighter than I am now, and touched a barbell twice a week for about 20 minutes. So
Yeah, and that you're probably at that threshold where it's like, I could go professional now, but then I'd be poor. So then
yeah,
that's the balance, isn't it? Because if you're not a professional athlete, you can't spend all your time training, recovering, eating. So it's a hard one to give up. I guess when someone like High Rocks rolls around for someone like yourself, who's probably just below, you start reading, and Matt Fraser said this about him in weightlifting. You start reading the sort of how far you can get in terms of the sport. Um, and you notice how light some people are, and the fact that they might be 5, 10 years younger than you. You sort of know where your limits are genetically as well. But then Hyrox comes around, you're like, actually, I'm quite strong anyway, and you've got that background with the running. It's almost a perfect blend, right? Um, so your first event, you knock out the park. Did you actually podium on that first time?
Yeah, so Friday, this Friday just
Yeah.
gone was the first time I've not podiumed in a solo event. So I podiumed in every one apart from Friday.
Wow.
Um, so yeah, that was a bit gutting, but everyone has poor races, and Friday was a proper kick in the teeth for me after like 6 months of not racing with the off season and stuff. Thought I was in pretty good shape. And yeah, it was meant to be on Friday, so I got a bit of a kick in the teeth, but then went back out yesterday and PB'd in the doubles and won that as well. We won our age category and came third overall, but only by a couple of seconds. We really missed out of it, and we're two middle-aged men with kids and a couple of jobs.
Yeah. Do you when you say these, you obviously doing back-to-back events, do you target a specific one, or do you do each of them as their own, like, I'm preparing for both?
So the doubles for me is a little bit different. It depends on your partner. And for me, I'm the better runner in our partnership, so it doesn't. I can recover a lot on the runs. And the paces are still decent. Like we averaged 3:45 yesterday, which is like 6 minute mile in. But for me is like sub threshold. So I'm recovering that I can come in and attack the stations, whereas he's attacking the runs and recovering a bit on the stations. So I'm doing a bit more of it. So there's tactics involved in all of it. Like especially the relays and the doubles is way more tactical than you think. And I've realized even the solos is way more tactical because you need to play to your strengths. So even being a good runner, I'm still like I'm around that threshold, but I'm trying to keep under it so that I can attack the stations a bit more. When I first started, I went full gas on the runs. Every time I got into a station, I was I was hanging out then. As after a couple of reps or 30, 45 seconds, I was gassed and having to take too much rest. I could recover again on the runs even, but just over the red line, and it just wasn't successful. And then it
Yeah.
took me 3 or 4 races to realize that if I just slowed my runs down by 5 to 10 seconds, I could make 30, 40 seconds on the station. It doesn't take Einstein to work out that overall that's the way I've got to play it.
Yeah, and I can relate. I've only done a couple, but I certainly go into it more of the person who can do the stations well and then just sort of hold on to the run, coming from a different sort of side. What I'm really interested in is what tactics specifically then, if we're here now, we might as well talk about it. If I'm a solo individual, then what sort of tactics should I be playing into then? Obviously, we've just mentioned about pacing the run a little bit and attacking the stations a bit more, but what else is there?
Like for me, the pace in this event is key. So like every start line I'm on, I've never seen anything like it. And you know, some running races, you get a couple of lunatics who go off in the first couple of miles, but most people know that the first couple of miles you're settling in. Even in a 5K, the race don't really start until 3K. On this, people are going out and running their like first K ski erg and second K before they even get to the real work in the sleds, way above threshold. And once you already start burning the matches, you ain't you ain't getting it back. By the end of that race, you're so compromised. 100 wall balls that aren't, especially in the open, 100 wall balls with 6 kilo is lightweight. Like even the 9 kilo is not that savage, but if you overcook the front end of it, the 9 kilos feels like the sun. And even when on my first couple of races, like I could do 100 wall balls unbroken, no problem. I got to the wall balls at the end and I was doing like tens and it was, taking 6, 7 minutes. But as soon as I realized going in there and that last run being an 8 or a 9 out of 10 rather than a 10 out of 10, you'd getting big sets out or even going unbroken, which is saving you minutes. But people going out, but I'm struggling to catch them on the first couple of runs, and running's my stronger thing. And the big geezers going out, pulling the cables off the ski erg. Like you don't need to. My advice on the ergs is take your 2K time. And if you're not very aerobically strong, add 10 seconds to your 500-meter split. You might lose 10 seconds in those ergs, but you'll definitely make it up on the next run and definitely at the end of the race.
Cool. What about the things like the sled then? Is there any tactics on that?
So it's real. Like the sled, for me, the sled push, even on a heavy, like sled day, like this on Friday, the sled wasn't that heavy. Like on the push, you can push it. And especially if you're a bigger geezer, you can move it easy enough. It gets a bit sticky but it only gets sticky if you've gone in there and you've already done 12 minutes of work at 95% max heart rate because you've tried to win the ski erg in the two first Ks. I don't think it's a massive issue. If you break it up early, you're even going to go into that lactate threshold. You can keep it below the red line and then you can carry on working from there. But it's real easy to blow yourself up on that first sled push and then you're in the locker for the rest of the
How are
race.
you breaking it up then?
I break even on the open weight now, I break it up into halves. So half a length at a time. So 6
Is that
meters.
is that 6 meters? Yeah.
Yeah, just over 6 meters, and then 2 or 3 breaths. You don't have to be stopping there for a nappy break. Couple of breaths, and then go again. Turn around, 2, 3 breaths, go again. That way, it just keeps you just under that red line, so you can attack it. Even with the pro sleds now, I'd probably break the first 2 up into 6s, maybe the third one, and then I'd probably have 2 breaks on the last one. And like even the pros are starting to do that now because they know they can. Well, although on sleds like Amsterdam and a couple of the most recent ones, they're pushing the sleds like the old open weight. So they're doing it in ridiculous times because they're sliding. But this weekend in Birmingham, the sleds were sticky like, and it's different in every venue you go to. So people are asking, what should I be running for these splits? Like all of the run courses are completely different. So it is a real experience. Like you need to build experience in these races of how it feels and how you should feel through the race rather than trying to stick to splits. Splitting up the stations is easy because it's pretty objective. Split it at 6 meters, but if you know that you're going red, you can feel your legs burning. You know, you get that horrible lactic-y type acidosis burn. You know it's coming. So if you stop just before that's coming on, you can run out of all these stations. If it comes on, you're waddling out the stations.
Oh, mate, this is absolute gold, I think, for people listening. I know we're going really tactical, but I think this is what people want to know. What about the sled pull then? Because we've obviously got the box to work within.
Yeah.
How are you tackling this one?
So this is what it can in the pro weights. This will make and break your race. It depends on how that sled's moving. Like for me, this is my biggest weakness at the minute. So it was wall balls. I think I'm getting there with them. Like they're always going to be a work on point. But the sled pull, because I only weigh like 77, 78 kilos, it's double my weight. So if we got like a pretty smooth sled, like in Berlin this year, the sleds were pretty decent. So like the push was 2.5 minutes and the pull was 3.5 minutes. That doesn't really take much out of me. But then on Friday, the sled pull was sticky and the new ropes are quite slack as well. So when you start pulling them, they stretch. So if you don't take the slack out of them, you're losing half your power before you even do that drive back out to keep moving it. So taking the slack out of the rope and then trying to get it moving backwards on a heavy sled is key. But you need to just be training them to death in training. Like you just need to be working on them all the time because more than the sled push, I think the sled push you can grid your way through. It doesn't take that much technique. There's a couple of different techniques, but getting as close into the sled and pushing it isn't that bad. But the sled pull, you've got to work on the technique definitely at the heavier weight. So if you're a women's pro or men's pro, if you haven't got a decent technique and you haven't just, ground it out in training, you're going to take a lot out yourself. Like it took me over 5 minutes on Friday and it ruined my race because by that time it just sucked all the energy out of me. It was like trying to pull a truck and, I had no power. I got to the burpees and the runs were right. I ran straight back out of the run and the runs didn't really get that much slower. The spread was probably 20 seconds across runs 2 to 8, which is all right. 15 to 20 seconds is probably all right. But I just had no zip or no power. So when I got to the burpees, normally I can jump a good 2 meters, but I was barely jumping 1.5 meters and I didn't want to get off the floor. So
Yeah.
it's just being prepared to deal with these sleds. And I think doing more on the sleds rather than like, you need to be strongish for this event, but strength endurance. So having a, 200 kilo squats ideal, but it's not, the crossover's not that massive really to a sled pull, even a deadlift's not that, because you're probably doing 40 pulls, maybe 45 pulls on a sled pull if it's a heavy sled. I'd say, for that 50 meters.
Yeah. So we're going to get to the training in a second, I'm sure, where we can talk about how to train for this stuff effectively, not just specifically doing the pull, but other things you can be doing to improve your ability to get through these things. I want to just finish up with the tactics on each of these stations. So you mentioned the burpees then. Are we looking to do a step into a jump? I mean, how are we doing this? Like, what's the advantages?
Saving yourself again for later on. So it's
Yeah,
all well and good, the old hop in, hop out, and you could probably get that in for a few reps, but it it zaps you. So I actually hop back now, and then on as pairs, I'll step in or hop in and just get moving as quick as possible. 'Cause you only, you get some time out with swapping over. But on a solo, I kneel up now, so I push my body up, bring my knee up, leave one hand down, and bring my other foot to my hands, and then jump. But I would say I'd probably do an 80% of how far I could actually jump, so that I don't use too much power and too much of that CNS and explosiveness. So
yeah,
because you're halfway through the race basically. Once you get out there, you're halfway, probably time wise, just under halfway, because
yeah.
um,
Uh,
the back end's a little bit longer. But
yeah, and these burpees are taxing for the whole body, right? I think from my experience, doing a step means you can cover a little bit more distance than a hop.
yeah,
Uh, and then obviously, like you said, they're not doing a full, most explosive jump you can do, but actually using the momentum as you come up out the burpee into straight into that jump again stops you having to like re-dip your knees. So there's tiny nuances, little tactics that actually play a lot into terms of conserving energy, which is the whole point. I was going to ask one question there that you just sort of moved over, which was how many burpees are you doing in a pairs then before you change it?
so it depends on. But so in pairs, it's communication, isn't it? So like if I look around and my partner's already hanging as we're coming into the burpees, I'm doing more. That's it. So yesterday I did the full first length, which was 40 meters, but I hammered them. Like, we were racing yesterday as well, so we would coming into the stations. The other pair were running a little bit faster than us, and we were coming into the stations, and they were a little bit ahead of us. And then I was like a dog after a bone. So I'd catch them up, and then we would just try and have to hold that off again as long as we could on the runs, and we managed to keep doing that until run 8.
Yeah,
But yeah, yesterday normally we're on a schedule where I start the stations and I'll finish the stations because I'm a stronger runner, so it gives them a little bit more. So normally I'll come in and do 10 burpees. He'll do 5. I'll do 5, 5, and then I'll just finish off. So, I'll end up maybe doing 20. He does
yeah,
10 to 12.
brilliant. What about lunges? Just as a solo to start with, how are you tackling that? Are you just trying to go all the way through with no rest?
Well, yeah, I'll just try and stay consistent. But with solo, with the 20-kilo bag where they open it, I can step through a bit more. So I'll probably do the first 30 or 40, doing a full step through. Whereas with a pro, I'll come and just do like a little toe tap in the middle and or up
Yeah.
at the top. So
So
that I
pro's 40 kilos, right?
30 on the lunges.
Okay. 30
So
kilos then, little toe tap, but you're still pretty much just consistent with your pace all the way
yeah,
through.
just try and keep move forward. I don't really the whole thing. I just keep trying to move forward and
Yeah.
without any big rest periods. The only time I really stood still is on sled push or
Yeah.
on a wall balls. But yeah,
Yeah.
but
But
most of the time just moving forward.
so obviously farmer's carry is probably the most simplest one. You just pick them up and sort of obviously go as
Move.
fast as you can. The longer you're holding them, the more stress you're putting yourself under. So just get it over with and done with. The wall balls you just said there, you try and do 100 unbroken. What's a realistic tactic or plan B when that doesn't happen?
So at first I thought having like a set number, or at least having a set number to get to, or trying to do 4 sets of 25, or a 40, 30, 30. But I think picking the ball up after putting it down the first time is horrible. It feels so much harder. So I try to go now till my shoulders just about start to burn, and then I stop. But with this on the open, I can get them done unbroken. So
Yeah.
I know I know I can do them unbroken. So it's a massive mental challenge. I think once you
Yeah.
nip them, you're in it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they're
Completely agree. And obviously, it's the last station. So it's at this point you can go, I'm just going to leave everything out on the floor. And if you're racing someone, that obviously helps. I was going to say that what's helped me in the past, and this is mostly CrossFit related, is picking a number, but then getting to that number and going, oh, I'm picking a further number, and then picking a further number, and then before you know it, you're 60 deep, and you're like, well, we might as well just get
No
to
point
100
stopping.
now.
Yeah.
That's always helped me sort of psychologically, because your body gets prepared to do that number you've just committed to yourself. So yeah, I think you're 100% right about the mental aspect. I was going to leave one more then, because we've kind of skipped over the ergs. What's your sort of pace you're holding? Is it like 140s, 145s max?
So, um, yeah, I had 5 seconds to my 2K times really. So I I could go faster on a ski erg, but I don't. I average 148 to 150 on the ski erg,
Yeah,
and that's pretty comfortable. It's like sub threshold. So I'll come out of there, and the next run's pretty fast as well into the sleds. But I'm still getting whipped by other people. I honestly don't mind leaving the ski erg or the sleds like down the field. It doesn't bother me
yeah,
because I know they're not my
yeah,
strongest events, and I know I can
yeah. And
outrun people.
even if they're rolling out with a 140, which I say is pretty good, you don't really want to be much faster than that. You're only leaving 15 seconds to them, which is absolutely nothing if they're working really hard. You will
Yeah,
make that up so quick. So actually, just dropping 5, 10 seconds for me anyway has always been an advantage on workouts or high rocks where it's got ergs in them. Mate, I
yeah,
think that's really good. Are you just on the pairs then? How are you breaking down the ergs? Are you doing two
yeah.
lots of
So different on both. So
okay,
the ski erg's real easy to change over. You don't lose any time on that. So you might lose a second. So I come in and do 200. So we do 200. So I do 200. He does 200, and then I finish 200, 200. I finish with the last 200, and I just try to keep it about 135 pace per 500. So that
yeah,
means I know that we'll come out then at like 320. With the run in and run out, it's probably normally about 330. So like you don't really need to be going much faster than that because no one else really is. Even the elites aren't going much. They're finishing between 320 and 330. So it's not that much difference. But
so
yeah, go ahead, sorry.
I'm curious to know, you mentioned the elites. How far off are you from the elites then? Are they holding a certain pace that's quicker than you then?
So on a solo, yeah. It depends on the course. Like so in Berlin, I was I go back to Berlin. It was an outdoor race. So it was different. It suited runners. The bloke that beat me by 8 seconds, finished fourth in Amsterdam last week. So in the Elite 15. Um, so it depends on the race, like because race this weekend, two Elite 15 blokes beat me by 5 minutes, but I had a shocker and they had decent races. So it's hard to know. It depends on the course and it just depends on the day. But I'm not that far off.
Yeah,
If I got a good race, if I could go and get a good race now and run a 57, I would be invited to an Elite 15 race. But it's easier said than done. It's finding the right race. The way they're
yeah,
doing it right now with the times and the two average times, I've got one that's there. I just need another one. Whether I can get that by the end of the season. But the last 12 months, the level has gone up ridiculous. It
yeah.
properly
It
shot
is,
up.
I think that's the natural progression in every sport, right? You find a sort of gaps where you can make up progress, and you start finding stuff within the gym that can accelerate your performance on the day. I want to just shift gears slightly, mate, because we've been very tactical at the moment, and specific to yourself and about your methods and stuff. What I'm curious to know is, what's your advice to people that want to take a step up? Maybe they've done a couple of Hyroxes. Maybe they're more like the 1 hour 15, 1 hour 30 guys, and they want to, come up to your level and start looking to break that hour mark. What advice would you give them?
The good thing about Hyrox is it's always the same. Like, and they're really good at making really objective data really accessible. So if you've done a couple, it's real easy just to go and look at where you're placing and where you need to work on. So even when you go on the website and look at your results, it will give you a position for your overall run time, your overall time, and then each station it tells you where you finished. So you can go and look at it and look. And if you go on high results, it tells you the percentile that you're in as well for each one. So if I'm going to write someone a program or give them advice, I'll look at what they've done, where they're finishing, and look at areas they need to work on. For most people, you can't go wrong with doing more running because 55% of the race is running really. Like you've got the 8K of running, but then another 800 meters of rock zone. And it's the majority of the race. So just even thinking yesterday, I think 56% of our race was some kind of running, right? The laps or the rock zone. So more running isn't going to hurt anybody, but that'll help you on the rest of the stuff as well, because it's going to improve your aerobic base. It's just making sure you can get the right balance and not getting hurt. So that's why
Yeah.
easy running. I love a good
Yeah.
jog.
So obviously do the running, but what about stuff in the gym? I'm talking more specifically now, strength benchmarks. We have a number of elements that are obviously above running in terms of the sled push and having the ability to run after lunges. Um, there is strength requirement. Do you have a certain amount of benchmarks that you look for athletes, or would you recommend that they get to prior to stepping out in order to get a good time?
I've seen people that are mega strong, like, hitting big numbers, but then their strength endurance is terrible because their overall endurance isn't great. And then the other way around, people that are really actually, really weak, but can move the stuff really well because they've just got a massive endurance base. So it's really hard to have a set start of numbers. I think you can't go wrong getting stronger. Like it's going to help you, but there is a point of diminishing returns for this, I think, because you need to work on that aerobic base more, because it's still in strength endurance. Like there's 100 lunges, there's 100 wall balls, 80 meters of burpee board jumps. Even the sled is still strength endurance because everything you're doing is multiple minutes. Like sled's 2 to 5 minutes and everything else is probably 2.5 to 4, 5 minutes. So having a good aerobic engine is more important than the strength numbers. Having good strength endurance and that crossover is good. So I don't have any specific numbers, but like doing big compound movements as part of your sessions key for any of this, but then
Yeah.
adding on the extra strength endurance. But again, that takes a toll on your body. So you've got to get the balance right with not doing too much. Like you go in every day and do like 150 wall balls or 150 lunges with decent weight, but you're not going to recover and you're not going to be able to do more of that stuff later on, later on in the week. So it's the knock on of what your sessions are doing. Like you can go in and do a Hyrox session, every other day and probably be all right. But you're not going to keep being able to put them together week in and week out consistently to be able to improve. So it's getting the balance right between getting your strength endurance stuff that's going to burn you out, your overall strength stuff that you need anyways, because that will improve your strength endurance and the
Yeah.
endurance stuff.
Yeah.
It is a bit of like a jigsaw.
Yeah. I know. I always say the same thing to athletes who always ask me about how to train effectively for it. It's not necessarily about being able to lift the world, but what strength does give you. And I don't want to go all sciencey on this, since we did our degree together. But what it does, it allows your rate of force development to increase as well. So being able to lift load, which is basically peak power, it allows you to increase how much speed it takes to generate that power. And we know that with every stride in a run, you're going to have a rebounding effect. Now, the stronger you are, it means that the less fatigue is going to be. And it also means you're going to be able to cover a further distance with each of those steps or jumps, so to speak. So actually being strong is really helpful. Now, obviously, there's a point where body weight becomes an issue, right? Because that gravity and your body weight, otherwise, Eddie Hall will be the fastest runner in the world, right? So it then becomes about diminishing returns. If you get too strong, you're probably going to be too heavy. Um, but I think there's probably, and I don't like to bang out, like you just said there, a 1 rep max number, but if you look at the pro division, it's a 200 kilo sled push, right? I just think you should be squatting at least half that number well enough to just say that it won't kill you when you do it,
Yeah.
which, 100 kilo squat isn't that big. But I think that would be a good estimate if you're doing the pro and let's say the normal standard's 150, 152, whatever it is. Again, half that weight, 75%, which is probably going to be around body weight. I think it's probably a good realistic target. And I don't mean for 1 rep. I think you should probably be able to do that for 5 to 10 reps.
Yeah.
That will be, in an ideal world, the problem we get, what I see is a lot of people that get into this sport, they don't see that those numbers because they don't really think it's a strength sport, and it isn't. But there is almost a requirement now to lift something, and what that's going to do is going to help you produce more power quickly, and it actually will help your running. Yeah, which is obviously a lot of people don't realize that. Obviously, being stronger, tighter core, tighter ligaments, everything's stiff, and what we want to be really stiff when we're running. Well, just means you're rebounding across the floor. If you're not strong, you're just going to be like running in quicksand. You're like flop, flop. And basically, once you've done some of the exercise, you just be really fatigued when you're running. And that's where the difference between being strong and being a good runner really sort of comes into play. Would you agree to any of that? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm obviously nowhere near talking about your competitive level, but looking at it from an analysis, from a strength conditioning perspective, that's what I think.
Yeah, the less you can take out of yourself so that you've got more to do in the running, the better. So if you're working at a lower capacity, so for me on a sled pull, on a heavy sled pull, I'm working too close to my top capacity at the minute, and that means I haven't got enough pop and rate of force development for the burpees and everything else later on. It's all I'm zapped and I'm done in. But if the sled's lighter, I'm going to outrun everybody, nearly everybody. Like, um, so if you're working at, it doesn't have to be much. Say if you're working at a 75% of your capacity, your strength capacity rather than 80%, that 5% is a big chunk that you can use for the rest of the race. So it's a fine balance between going into the red zone and staying just below it. If you stay just below it, you're going to be in a way better place towards the end of the race. But if you're already straying into it because you're using a massive part of your maximum capacity on the earlier stuff, you're just going to tire yourself out fatigue, because that central nervous system, peripheral nervous system, and everything else fatigues way faster than your endurance capability.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's probably worth stipulating that we're talking about high level here. We're talking about competing at a high level. If you're just looking to rock up and survive and do the event, most people would be all right in terms of like just being able to get through it, um, and enjoy it and, have a good time and stuff like that. We're talking about if you want to, do the event and try and be competitive and improve your performance each time. This is the sort of stuff you're going to need to be working on in training. As you mentioned before, simulation training consistently isn't really going to get you what you need to, because it's just too much and it's not going to be enough components within building your whole base of performance. So it needs to come in cycles, like you said. It needs to be strength, it needs to be strength endurance, it needs to be aerobic capacity and stuff like that. I was going to mention one thing that you touched on sort of earlier, which was like this zone two base. I'm assuming that a lot of your training is around building a sort of zone two base. How often
Yeah.
would you say a week are you just doing that?
So a lot. Like,
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah,
uh, yeah, probably 80 to probably 85% of my training. Like, well, it's a little bit less now that we're in season. Like, I'm a bit more sharper stuff towards the races and stuff. But over the summer, I almost no speed stuff really. It was all zone two, lots of zone one running. But my running base is massive, so like I can handle bigger volumes of running, even the faster stuff. But I don't think there's any requirement for it. We start with a lot of like strides and zone two, because that gives you enough turnover to build up a base without getting injured. And that consistent aerobic training is where you make your real gains. If you're constantly hammering high intensity stuff, you aren't going to build up the base that you need. And that aerobic stuff gives you the foundation to be able to do more high intensity stuff. So, for a big 6-7 month block of just hitting as much of that lower intensity stuff as you can, because you can do that along with loads of strength stuff, because it's not going to take that much out of you. If you're sensible and smart with it and you're genuine with how easy it is, like, because a lot of people get sucked in, people aren't good enough at running to do that much volume. So they think that they're running in zone. The zones are blurry, like, they fade into each other. We call them what they want, but that true easy running where you could have a a full-on conversation the whole way. You're not out of breath. You don't feel out of control. That kind of running is like paramount for this, because even when you do that, it means that you can recover quicker. So especially in Hyrox, when you are going to have little tiny breaks, the quicker you can recover in those breaks, the quicker you can go again. So the more time you're saving, especially in doubles as well, because you might get 30 to 40-second breaks. If you can get your heart rate down 30, 40 beats a minute, you're ready to go again and smash it. So you need to build up a big aerobic system, that cardiovascular, heart, lungs, capillaries, density. And you need to do that with the easy stuff, because you can't 6 to 8 weeks of sharp stuff and you start to plateau anyway. Whereas the
Yeah.
consistent stuff.
And the benefits have been researched quite vastly. You look at the larger span of the mitochondria within the cardiovascular system, holding more oxygen, and we'd look at utilizing triglyceride as an energy source, and you're working for over an hour, so glycogen isn't going to get you very far. So all these things can only be done if you do the right training, and in fact, it takes me back to when I used to try and do long distance or longer distance running. A lot of the books that were coming out from the Kenyan athletes were about doing low intensity, longer zone two runs, which is obviously here we are talking about the same thing. So obviously there's something in it. Um, I like the fact that you finished off that thing with saying you sort of sharpening the sword towards the end, with probably a little bit more zone five work where you're working at flushing out the lactic of the body, because you're going to be experiencing those moments where, certainly in a pair, where you're going to get your heart rate really, really high, and then you're going to have time to sort of flush it out. If you're not prepared for that, that will really, really hurt you. And once you go to that sort of dead man zone, it's really hard to come back. You're just sort of getting carried along. And we've all been there where you just sort of body bag sort of getting dragged around the course when someone else is doing all the work. Um, I love that, mate, and I think that's going to be quite helpful for a lot of the guys there. What I'm going to add on to this is what nutrition, we sort of pre-chatted about this, and you were like, "Don't ask me about it," but I want to know um, about what your nutrition. I'll take you off the hook a little bit and just go, what does your nutrition look like leading up to the event?
Look, it's pretty generic. Like, it's nothing fancy. Like, I don't worry too much about my food. My food quantity is more important than my quality, probably, because I have to eat that much. Honestly, I'm just always hungry. Like, so it's hard to eat like really nutrient dense food when you're eating all the time. So like, luckily I get a bit of help from my protein, so I do end up like using quite a lot of their, you know, pre-made protein and snacks and stuff, just so I can throw stuff down my neck. So I would prefer to eat fruit and, healthier stuff, but it's just, I'm eating that much. It's hard to do sometimes. And, you know, um, so it's not fancy. There's a lot of carbs, there's a lot of protein, a lot of carbs. Like, I would say I'm probably like 4,500 calories a day, which is quite a lot for like someone who only weighs 77, 78 kilos. But training 2 hours a day, Monday to Friday, like it's, it takes it out of you.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I think it's a really good point actually, because a lot of people at the moment, we sort of like Eddie Abu, I think about, who's like telling you not to eat any carbs and stuff. I think hold on, my dog out to say in a pain in the butt. Yeah, we talk about people avoiding carbs because of unnecessary fat gain and stuff. Look, you got to imagine, yeah, there's a difference between eating for aesthetics and eating for performance. Uh, I'll leave the health one hanging out because there's science both ways in it. Um, but you need to make sure, obviously, you're replenished in order to keep putting an output that's required for the certain sport. And you just said it then. How does your nutrition look on the day then? And mention my protein. Then we're gonna get to supplements in a minute. In fact, unless you want to cover it now, but what does your sort of pre-race meal look like and stuff like that?
So this is still a pain in the ass for me. I'm still working it out. Like, do you see these later races? So the pro races are on like 7:30. What time do I start on Friday? 10 to 8. That ain't good for me. Like, I'm ready winding down for bed and eating dinner and stuff. Like, I it's trying to get the nutrition right for that late ones is hard. So, you're probably eating 2 normal meals and then snacking on some like oats and fruit and stuff like towards it, but 3 or 4 hours out, I can't really eat much before that, else I'm stitched up and ready to be sick when I start pushing the
Yeah.
lever and racing.
And that's going to just be sat in your stomach, right? We
Yeah.
had Ryan McGregor on, who's been doing a couple of them. He's probably not at your level, but he's certainly catching. And he mentioned about having some sort of pasta meal like 4 hours before, just so where it can digest before. He then mentioned about uh, carbohydrate gels and other caffeine and other elements that he takes during the event. Would you have a similar plan with my protein involved or anything like that?
No. So like this is personally just me. I always suffered with it, even during like my endurance stuff, running stuff. I suffered with taking gels. I really struggled, even on a marathon, and it ruined a couple of my marathons, taking too many that my stomach can handle it. I've tried to train with everything, and I've just got a baby belly. Like, it's terrible. So I have to try and stay away from everything. The only thing, like, even in an hour event yesterday, I didn't drink anything. Like, before it, obviously, I electrolytes and stuff before, and some, and coffee. But
Yeah.
during it, nothing. It's To be fair, on a doubles as well, I'm moving too fast to be able to stick that down my face. Like,
Yeah.
I could on the runs, but it's too much hassle and
Yeah.
not worth
Yeah.
my risk for something that's 50 to an hour and 5 minutes. I can get away with what I've eaten before. So maybe a coffee or a caffeine tablet, like 20 minutes before or something. It's about
Yeah.
as far as I'm going
And
with it.
and to be fair, this is an unknown territory for me because I've never taken any carbohydrate gels or anything like that. Um, so how many minutes before the event are you necking a coffee, sort of getting yourself ready?
Depends. Like the 20 minutes, 30 minutes for a coffee probably. And it would only be a
Yeah.
little small espresso or something like that. Nothing.
Yeah, a little espresso just to
Yeah.
perk you up a bit.
Um,
Are you taking anything during the event? Are you like grabbing some water? Are you just
yeah.
going all out?
No,
Yeah,
no. So if depends, see these venues are like, they're air conditioned, but some of them are pretty poor air conditioned, but that sucks all the moisture out of the air. So you end up with like a real dry mouth doing them. So I might take a swig of water, but it's more for comfort of not having that horrible dry mouth than it is for hydration, because I make sure that the day before and a couple of days before I'm loading up with electrolytes and water so that by the time it gets to race day, I'm already preloaded. And if it's an early morning race, you're all right from the days before. If it's a little bit later in the day, probably, you know, in that early morning, I'm getting in a good couple of liters of water, um,
yeah,
and my other bits and pieces, electrolytes before anything. So I don't really need anything during it because, it is only an hour
yeah.
ish. If you're
And
going for longer, at 90, some people are out there 90 minutes to 2 hours, then you need to be
sure.
drinking and you probably need to take some gels on if you do it
Yeah.
out there that long.
Yeah, and it's probably worth mentioning now, look, that's why we do the simulation training and why you should be probably the last couple of weeks, probably like practicing the whole thing almost. So you can experience what it's going to be like. Because if that's difficult for you, you're going to be racing other people, you're going to have a bit of adrenaline. It's going to be quicker than what you do in training. Um, so stick to whatever you do in training, and that will be the right way. Don't just suddenly start taking gels on the day or drinking an espresso halfway through and stuff because it's just not going to prepare you. So yeah, if you want to take stuff like that, I'd say practice with it and get a feel for how it feels. Because for me, and I agree with you, has never really felt the need to take one, and when I have, it's not really sat right. Um, so I think it's personal choice. I'm going to finish up, mate, with one more question, and then what I like to do, I'm going to bang open the Facebook. I'm on a Facebook newbie group, and we're just going to rattle through some questions as sort of SMEs. Well, you're the SME, but I'll just be as moral support. Some of the questions, but the last one is there anything you've purchased in the last 12 months? I mean, you could say 18 months if you like as well. That's really been a game changer for you that you've not been using before, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, why wasn't I using this? Anything that comes to mind?
I bought a ski erg for my shed.
Yeah, nice.
But it just made life so much easier. It means I'm banging more volume on that. Like, I would rather ski now than row. I actually don't mind doing it. It's one of those things, the more you do of it, the better you get, the easier it becomes. So like I could easily go out there now and do 10K an hour, maybe even on the ski erg in zone 2 without having any issue really. Although I'd rather do that on the treadmill, I think, and I like running. So that's maybe like, so for a while there, I could get like 35K a week out on the ski erg, no worries. And that just maybe meant I could get a bit more volume in without the impact of smashing my body up.
I love that, mate. Right. So let me get this then. Let me just find this. I'm gonna bang out this one. All right.
Yep.
So we're on basically, I don't want to go through like all the stuff that's on this page, right? Because we got many groups and stuff, but basically I'm on CrossFit Newbies. It's a group I follow just to help people really. And there's some relevant questions I feel that might come up. We'll read through a couple of them because some of them I look at and I question their sanity. Um, can you place a towel somewhere? I'm a sweaty girl, so I need to wipe my face a lot. So can you bring a towel, place it somewhere? Probably a
Uh,
no-go, isn't it?
well, you're not allowed to take anything from the sidelines. So I don't know if that would class as grabbing, because you're not allowed to take a drink off somebody unless it's apart from the water station or anything. So I don't think you could place it somewhere. I don't even know
So
where
if
you would
you're a
put it.
sweaty girl, I'd say wear some of the sweatbands you
Yeah.
see tennis players wear.
Yeah,
Get some
that's
of
it. A lot
them.
of people do that. In fact, they even got a partnership. Hyrox have got a partnership with a Velits, I think it's called, and they've got
Oh
long,
yeah,
like,
oh yeah, yeah. Actually, there you go. Do you get a free pair as you still race to you, or do you have to buy
yeah,
them?
but yeah, you can get a free pair, but you have to pay post and packaging, which is about 20 quid anyway. So you just well buy
Oh
one.
right, that's not worth it. Okay, skip that one. That's not very good. Another question regarding wall balls, mixed doubles. Does the women hit the same height as guys,
No, so
and the same weight for the ball?
yeah, it's the same weight. So they both use 6 kilos, but the men have to hit the 10-foot target, and the women have to hit the 9-foot target underneath it.
Oh, they've always got it easier, haven't they?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Don't know what that is. A workout. Uh, I'm running my first Hyrox in Jan, but I am a judge for wall balls in November. What are the tips or things that made it easier for you? I'm not sure what the question says. I think they're trying to say, um, is it about wall balls?
Yeah, it must be. So actually, that's if it's asking what people want from a judge on the wall
Oh, right.
balls,
Okay.
you want them just to be talking to you, because there's nothing worse than you thinking you've done 50 reps and they're only counted 27 because they've given you 23 no reps and not told you what they're for. So
So you just
I
hear, yeah.
asked them to do them like, yeah, if they depends what country you're in. So in Italy last week, I said to her, English, please. So she counted. Uh, every number apart from the tens in Italian, and I had no idea what was going on. So she would be counting in Italian, then she'd be like 10, counting more, and then 20. But so if they need to be clear with their no reps and tell you what they're for. So instead of just shouting no rep, and then not
Yeah.
telling you what it's for, they need to tell you it's a no rep and the height. And the more often you can call out the numbers, the better, I'd say. But
Yeah. I got a similar experience. I was at CrossFit Regionals in Madrid, and when I got onto the assault bike, it had like reset, and the only thing on the screen said age, and nothing was working. So I was just pedaling along, and the judge was Spanish. I couldn't understand the things she was saying. I was just like cycling. Everyone had got off the bikes, and I was like, "What am I going to do here?" In the end, I found out afterwards when she told me to get off. She was counting the revolutions of the bike. God knows how that's a tactic to measure how many
that's
calories you've done, but no, that's where I was. Quite funny. Here's one. Hello, competed first doubles yesterday. Can anyone help with photos? Are they the same as the pair or do they differ? I think they're talking about the packages. So if you
yeah.
do a paired event, you have to buy one or two packages.
You buy, so they use an AI system to take a picture of your face, and then it shows you the pictures of just you, and you can buy them. But generally, it'll be like your partner will be stood next to you or whatever. So yeah, basically, you have to pay 2 packages.
Two packages if you want the best,
All
but
of
you probably should
yeah,
get a few pictures here and there.
yeah,
Okay. Um, right, what's this? Hi everyone. New goals, achievements. Drop me. Okay, yeah, just meeting someone. Uh, Okay, so another intro one. We'll do a couple more, right? Because there might be something
Yeah,
in there that might be of interest to someone. My first high rock, so I'm really buzzing. My time at 2:25, especially with a foot injury and a back injury. Uh, okay, we're actually just thanking the judge. Don't know why. Hey, or me and my boyfriend doing mixed doubles. We're so petrified of being slowest. Oh, we have both recently had injuries. Are there people who walk the running sections? What times do slower people usually finish? Please can someone reassure us that there are people at all paces.
yeah. So there's, you know, there's people walking lots of the running things. In fact, last week it was a bit of a in Milan. It was a bit of a more congested course, and there was blokes there that you would think would be running no worries and pushing the sleds like, you know, big ripped geezers, and they're just walking down the middle of the track chilling. Like there's people walking all over the place. There's people taking 10 to 15 minutes on the K splits. The average time for a Hyrox Open, I think, is around 90 minutes. So
Yeah.
there's people taking over 3 hours to do them. And the judges will, and everybody at the supporting you will act exactly the same as if you took 50 minutes or 3 hours. And in fact, you know, one of my, one of my friend's cousins did Glasgow earlier in the year, and he pretty much did 100 wall balls and reps of one. So 100 by one reps is pretty hardcore. At one point, he was on his hands and knees, like hugging the ball, and like people were chanting his name and stuff. Like, so people were screaming to get him done. Like, the community support is pretty decent. Everybody, like, the whole idea of it is, like you said earlier, anybody could come and do it, and it is a sport for everyone. So they do try and get everybody through it, and the judges are pretty good at like trying to encourage you to get through it. That
Yeah.
they have judging standards to stick to, but if you're really struggling, like they're gonna help you out.
Yeah. And, I mentioned it earlier, but there's probably a few, and you just mentioned some of the rip guys. Look, if you run out and run that K really hard and you go all out on the skier, you're probably going to find yourself completely lactic and you're going to be like struggling. Not surprised they're walking. They've probably done the first two stations thinking they could just run through it all. Um, so pacing yourself, I would advise, even if you're going slow, and if you've never done one, you certainly need to sort of be testing this in your training. Just prepare yourself for what it's going to be like. Um, so I'm going to finish this one here. It says, no way I could complete Hyrox at present. I can't go deep enough on the lunges or the wall ball. Are there any good exercises to free up seriously stiff hips?
It's a bit of a hard, without knowing a bit more, it's a bit hard. But like, you know, split squats and Bulgarian split squats, anything like that. Even just working through some normal more mobility stuff. It doesn't have to be
Yeah,
crazy. Like I say to a lot of people, just go on YouTube and stick in lower back or hip mobility program and get like something for 5-10 minutes. Do it every day and work through that, and then start building that up with putting some weight on, so that you probably get some good range. Start doing some split squats. Once you can get your knee to the floor with a split squat, even if you have to start with like front foot elevated, or a pad under your knees, so you come down to that and then just start lowering it down a little bit lower, so that you just work through that range. It's
yeah,
just consistency of
100%.
doing it.
And what you just said there is actually ideal, really. You've got to be consistent. And if you're trying to break down soft tissue, because that's all it is here, whether people say, when they can't squat because they got tight ankles and stuff, I don't believe you. Um, you just got basically tight soft tissue that can be broken down. Soft tissue can be broken down. It's why everyone has the ability to do the splits. I'm not saying you should have to, but everyone has the ability to do that. It would just take a lot of consistently trying to break down those fibers. But like you said, you've got to build up these movements before you can get to the intensity. And I don't just mean the do them quickly. I mean the straight and being able to do the multiple reps. Start with the mobility, add the stability, and then add some isometric drills in there, which is basically holding stuff within these positions. And then you can start building up repetitions. I like that, mate. It's a pretty good question, actually. See, we got one more just because I'm enjoying this. What's this? Well, I want tickets for mixed doubles next year. Not sure where to look other than the Hyrox sites. Is there any places it rocks tickets? That's
Yeah,
the
rock
place, isn't it?
tickets. Yeah, I was on there tonight actually. Yeah,
Well,
but yeah,
look,
now they're pretty
that's
decent.
where you can get secondhand tickets, right?
Yeah, yeah. They've got an app now, so you can just download the app and then click, and you select what ticket you want. So you can sell your tickets on there. You can buy tickets, but
All
there's
right,
loads.
mate. Amazing. I'm gonna end that screen because I think that was an interesting piece. That about wraps it up, mate. And I just want to say, look, it's been what we're in 58 minutes, and I think really we've just been firing off tactical advice and tips for anyone that's doing high rocks at the moment. I think there's going to be a lot of value from them. And if there's anything specifically you want to ask us, Aaron himself, he's going to be on the gram, he's going to be on the social medias. Is there anywhere you want to direct them in terms of where people should be looking to get advice from you? What sort of knowledge they can get from you? Anything like that?
I only really use Instagram now, so
Yeah,
WDM coaching on there. But I just stick some educational stuff in there and some stuff about the people that I already coach and what they do and what I do basically. But there's some links to my coaching stuff on there if anybody's interested. There's a couple of different programs, but yeah, mainly Instagram.
amazing, mate. And I think that if you are wanting to improve and sort of step to that level, obviously Aaron's helped a load of people in terms of programming and stuff. So certainly a credible source. What I'm interested to know now, mate, are we going to see you on the world stage? Are you going to be top 15 Las Vegas? Are you going to taking down Hunter McIntyre? Is that where we're going to see you next? Sponsored by Puma and stuff?
I don't know about Puma, but yeah, but that's the goal, isn't it? Like, so, I feel like I'm knocking on the door. I just feel like you never know where these races are going to go because the courses are so different at the minute. Having this time thing to get people in is the thing. It's selecting the right course and being able to get there and then get the 2 times. So it takes the 2 averages of your 2 times. Like I said, I need like a 57 minute now would probably get me in the top 15. Like a 58 would probably get me maybe a roll down place. So it depends whether I can get it this season. But that's the goal. But if not that, I'm going to world champs anyway for the age group stuff. So win age groups solo is probably the goal. And pairs as well with Sai for the 40 to 49 category.
Amazing.
Middle-aged men.
Yeah. Mate, brilliant, mate. Loved it. Loved this conversation. And I wish you all the best, mate. And hopefully we can catch up for round 2 next year when you're, the world champion. All right, mate.
Cheers, mate. Yeah.
Thanks for all your time and your effort. Cheers, buddy.
Cheers.
Take care.